In those 16 years, you offer a lot from the Asian culture, especially the Korean culture. And I mean, let's just start with, one of your first chapters is that Buddhist nuns and the microbiome, right? And how you learned from an ancient way, something that we are, again, bringing forward into science, the understanding of how important your microbiome is and everything from your mood to all types of chronic diseases. So can you start there with what did you learn in your journey from Buddhist nuns in correlation to the microbiome?
Yeah, and I think, what you're saying is correct. The new science is actually catching up with the old wisdom.
It is, yeah.
I think, when you watch the Buddhist nuns and you're learning from them, they're not, they're, I think it's all now being connected together. I don't think they were sort of living in, akin with the environment, but, I think now we're starting to put the science attached to it. So so after I started observing things, in Hong Kong, as I was doing some research, I found a cohort of Buddhist nuns that were living in the mountains of Korea. One of them is really famous. She appeared on Netflix, Chef's Table, and she does something called temple food, which is, cooking a very traditional way in Korean cuisine. And it's using organic, well, really ingredients that she's foraging from the forest, or growing in sort of her messy little garden. And it's using that, and also pairing that with fermented condiments. And there's a ton of ferments that they use in their traditional cuisine. The other thing too is that it becomes this very, spiritual practice for them. So they really feel like they're growing the plants and then they're kind of putting it inside them, and that becomes part of the medicine of it all. What they're practicing is something called Yak Sik Dong Won. It's sounds like a complicated Korean word, but it means food is medicine. It's not necessarily really about food, although food is really important. It's really a philosophy of a more preventative and proactive approach to health. And I think it's, something that we often dismiss or we forget, just like I did when I landed in the hospital as a first step. And it dates back to ancient times. The Korean Buddhist nuns, actually, a lot of them retired from the royal kitchens. And there was a lot, if you look back into the dossiers of these royal kingdoms, a lot was done to promote the longevity of the kings and their royal families. And so they would have these elaborate feasts with hundreds of dishes. And if you look at, Korean panchan is little side dishes. There's tiny little bowls, on a table, and they all contained roots and different produce and protein. And they're all sort of very seasoned with these fermented condiments, which lends an umami flavor to it. But the Yakshik Dongwon is a fundamental belief that healthcare starts with what you eat, with nutritious foods, and then secondarily with more advanced medical treatments if there's no improvement. So, in Korea, this is very different than what happens in the US. I have had two children. After you have babies, for example, you will spend, it's a very normalized procedure where have a dedicated month to have the body recover, especially if you're focused on breastfeeding or, just kind of caring for the baby. They have a lot of different types of dishes that they are providing for the mother, like seaweeds. I mean, I was having a seaweed Korean soup straight out of the hospital when I gave birth to my firstborn. So it just really, Yakshi Donwon dates back to the ancient times, but it also represents terrain-based living. It's about building the resilience of your body. So it kind of terrain-based living, I feel like, is very much, it's like when you look at that versus germ theory, because I grew up with germ theory, I was really afraid of germs and I was always kind of washing my hands, really antiseptic and afraid of touching dirt because I always thought that that would cause disease. But terrain-based theory is about really what the nuns do. They are going outside, being in touch with dirt, they're being in touch with nature and eating this way, and they're building the resilience, the soil of their bodies so that they're stronger when they're exposed to the germs.
Yeah, no, I loved seeing that you had terrain theory in the book because it is so essential that we start to realize and start to move away maybe from a pure pasteur look of the world that we have to be over sanitized. And you even brought it up when you're talking about zero waste. You know, a lot of the fruits we see in our Whole Foods and everywhere almost look perfect. They
Mhm.
look, almost shined up and they have no blemishes, and the ones that do, we usually stay away from, right? When in reality, those offer many benefits over the ones that may be so polished, and some of them may be non-organic. That's how they look the way they do, and have lots of pesticides and other things on them. Can you go into how the not just the terrain theory itself helps model that, but this idea of utilizing all fruits, even the ones that have blemishes, going more towards a zero waste approach is actually a healthier one for us and the world?
Yeah, I think anyone can sort of go back into the food data. There's a
Yeah.
lot of statistics, you can look at the calories, you can look at, the nutrients that are provided. So, even going into the U.S. government's, they have all these statistics. So if you take a look, compare an apple versus an apple with a peel, and then
Mhm.
you can compare them with different types of apples or different types of fruits, you start seeing that you will significantly increase your nutrient load by just eating the peel. So that's something that I very much promote now, when I'm eating or, if I'm feeding something to my family, I am not, taking away the peel because it serves a lot of purposes. One, increases the nutrients that you're eating, but two, and the fiber, but it also stems food waste. I think, we produce food and a lot of it's actually thrown away. And 50% of that waste actually happens in our home because we do things like peeling the fruit and throwing that away, but when it in fact is actually edible and really good for us. So in Korean culture, they do something, what I call the whole plant. So, a long time ago, we knew, and we're so far away from food now because when we go into a supermarket, it's packaged, it's very disconnected to, what the actual fruit or food might have looked like. Like if you take a look at a ketchup bottle, for example, a lot of kids might not know that that is actually from tomatoes. But a long time ago, they would grow things and know how long it took, and then they would really want to use the entire plant. So the whole plant is really, using the plant from flower to root, and then also the peel. And it's just so much better for you, so much better for your gut, and also you're stemming food waste.